of us at Zigwheels love the TVS Ntorq. It's already beaten out 3 of its competitors in the segment, and in our last comparison video, we declared this as the best scooter in the 125cc category. But Suzuki might have something to say about that with their Burgman Street. Now technically the Burgman Street, under all that flash, is an Access 125, a scooter which the Ntorq has already beaten. So is all that flash and bulky bodywork enough for the Burgman to take on our choice in this segment? Well, time to find that out.
But before we carry on, don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell to stay notified.
When the Ntorq first came out, it really blew us away with its edgy design. Yes, it's got some interesting design touches such as the jet exhaust like 4 vents at the back, and the T-shaped LED tail light does look really sporty. But for the most part, the Ntorq really doesn't break the mold in terms of scooter design. The Burgman, on the other hand, is a whole different story. When it comes to design, we are a bit torn between these two scooters. The Ntorq, with its sharp lines and bright colors, looks very youthful and exuberant, but its overall shape is still very traditional. On the other hand, with its massive front apron and LED headlight, its maxi-scooter styling if you will, the Burgman sure is a head-turner, at least from the front. From the back, it's got a bit of a chicken leg syndrome like what you have seen on the Intruder 150, but overall the design feels quite mature and even the colors reflect that to a large extent. If I had to pick one of the two, I think it would be the Burgman if I could ignore that smaller rear wheel. So both scooters offer great quality of plastics, paint and overall build, and while the Burgman is put together pretty solidly, there are minor panel gaps in that scooter's massive front apron. But how do these two scooters stack up when you hop on them? Now the Ntorq seat has been one of our favorites. At a height of 765 mm, it is very low and it's quite narrow up at the front as well, which means riders of pretty much any height can get their feet down without any problem. And even the riding position is quite nice because the floorboard is set fairly low and the handlebar is kind of tall. It's a little bit towards you and it's quite wide. So it's a very natural position to ride a bike in. At 780 millimeters, the Burgman seat isn't as short as the Ntorq's, plus it's also quite wide, which means shorter riders might have a little difficulty getting their feet down flat on the ground. Even the seat is a little bit firmer as compared to the Ntorq's, but it's not a big problem at all. One big difference here though is the riding position, where on the Ntorq it's meant to be more in control. On the Burgman, it's all about having a relaxed ride with the handlebars set low and a little bit farther away from you. Even the floorboard has plenty of room for your feet, and you can even put your feet up on the apron just like a true maxi scooter for a very relaxing riding experience. Now we have always maintained that the backseat experience on the Ntorq isn't all that great. The seat has a fairly hard edge and it does poke you in your bum just a little bit. And if you're on the larger side, well then even the grab rail interferes in the way you're sitting. Overall, there's not much space on the back seat of this Ntorq. On the Burgman though, it's a completely different experience. First of all, I've got plenty of space on the seat, and secondly, the seat is extremely well padded and it's quite soft. So overall, at the back, it's very comfortable here. The only downside is it takes a bit of effort to climb on this tall back seat. When it comes to under-seat storage, both the scooters are almost evenly matched, though on paper the Ntorq does get a slight advantage. The other advantage that the Ntorq has is a light in the boot, which the Burgman doesn't get, and that's a feature that you will sorely miss once you get used to it. It also gets a charger for your phone in there, but charging your phone under the seat means it does get quite hot. But the overall storage advantage has to go to the Burgman, which gets 2 massive cubby holes on the front apron. The one on the right can easily accommodate a 1-liter water bottle, and the one on the left, where it's got a DC charging socket inside, And it's got a lid which so far has been proven to be weatherproof, which means you can easily store your phone, your wallet and all other essentials when you're riding. And when it comes to storing stuff on the floorboard, both the scooters do get two hooks, but in terms of overall space, there is just no beating the Burgman, which fits our large camera back without any problems. Since we are in 2018, practicality aside, features matter too. And here's where the Ntorq really shines. The TVS's all-digital instrumentation is just loaded. A lap timer, top speed recorder, temperature gauge, even Bluetooth connectivity and a smartphone app as well as navigation. That said, once the novelty wore off, the only feature that proved to be the most useful was caller ID. The Burgman has a smart-looking all-digital instrument cluster as well, but it's nowhere as fancy as the Ntorq's. Where the Suzuki really fights back is with its LED headlight, which provides much better illumination than the Ntorq's halogen lamp, though the reach isn't as much as that from the Activa 5G's LED headlight. Now though, on to more fun stuff. Now so far things have been going the Burgman's way, but the Ntorq really fights back when it comes to performance. Now don't get me wrong, the Burgman is a pretty good performer, amongst the best in its segment. In fact, it gets to 60 km/h half a second quicker than the Access. With Ntorq, it gets there a whole second quicker than the Burgman. And even when it comes to top speed, the Ntorq holds a 7 to 8 km/h advantage over the Burgman. Now both motors are very tractable, but again in terms of outright mid-range grunt, the Ntorq really takes the cake. And again in this segment, both these scooters are pretty much the benchmark when it comes to refinement levels, but at high speeds, the Ntorq's motor feels a little bit smoother. That said, at city speeds, you won't really notice the difference in smoothness between these two engines. But enough about miles per hour. Let's talk miles per gallon. Kilometers per liter. And in this department, the Burgman not only creams the Ntorq, but every other 125cc scooter as well. The higher efficiency combined with a larger fuel tank than the TVS means that the Suzuki truly is a fill it, shut it and forget it scooter for about 300 kilometers at least. Now the Ntorq has really set the benchmark among scooters when it comes to handling. 12-inch wheels at both ends along with wider rubber means that it feels very stable through the turns and also inspires a lot of confidence when you tip it into a corner. The Burgman on the other hand runs a smaller 10-inch wheel which simply doesn't have the stability of a larger 12-inch rear. Plus, its skinnier tires means it turns in very quickly, but it doesn't feel as planted as the Ntorq does. It's the same story again when it comes to shedding speed. The Burgman's smaller front disc and skinnier tires simply can't match the stopping power of the Ntorq's fatter rubber and larger disc brake. You do have the benefit of combined brakes on the Suzuki, but stopping distance from 60 km/h is still about 2.6 meters more than the TVS. Now usually scooters which offer sporty handling are known to have a very harsh ride quality, but the Ntorq turns this over on its head, and I'm sorry to keep using the word benchmark over and over again, but that's exactly what the Ntorq does. It really sets the benchmark when it comes to ride quality in this segment. It really remains unfazed over bumps and potholes of pretty much any size, and when riding on our fantastic roads, I think this bike, if you're riding solo, is the best option you can get. That said, at the back, if you're riding pillion, the ride does feel a little bit stiff as it does transmit a few shocks up to the seat, but the ride settles very quickly after that. The Burgman on the other hand is typically Suzuki when it comes to ride quality. The front end is nice and pliant, but the back end does feel a little bit stiff. And if you're going over really sharp bumps, it tends to bounce around at the back. With the pillion though, things change completely and the ride immediately feels a lot softer than it would with a solo rider. That said, Even though the ride is extremely plush with a pillion on board, it does tend to wallow a bit once you go over a sharp bump. Now, choosing between these two scooters was a lot tougher than I had originally anticipated. The Ntorq is clearly the more youthful one, the more fun to ride one. The Burgman, on the other hand, is more practical and more stylish as well. If you want a scooter with performance, there is no question about it, the Ntorq is your choice. But if you want a scooter that does the whole scooter thing better, it has to be the Burgman. At this point though, if I had to make a general recommendation, it would be the Burgman. But here's the problem, because Suzuki is positioning the Burgman as a premium 125cc scooter, and that makes it expensive, about 8,000 rupees more than the Ntorq, which we think is a little too much. If money is no bar, go for the Burgman, you will not regret it. So, with a slightly heavy heart, we have to admit, thanks to it being a great all-rounder and great value for money, our choice in this segment still remains the TVS Ntorq.